Hello, vinyl community. This is Edward, aka Prog Rock Tommy, coming at you with a video response. I saw a video by Big Star 1000 called Gimme 10 1974, and I thought that I'd like to take a crack at that and show my 10 from 1974. And so if I seem like I'm going too fast, it's not because I drank too much coffee. It's just that I want to try to stay under the 10-minute mark. But before I begin, I want to talk about a few music facts of 1974. This one that I'm going to share is not a music fact first, but when these records were released in 1974, yours truly was 6 years old. Pretty neat to know that these records were coming out, and years later, I don't know when I started buying them or getting into these groups, but it's to me it's kind of cool to think about. But here's some music things that went on in 1974. In January 1974, Bob Dylan and the band kicked off their 40-date concert tour at Chicago Stadium, and it's Dylan's first time on the road since '66. Also, the Ramones played their first concert at the Performance Studio in New York. And Van Halen in '74 played their first gig on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood at Garzarias. I don't know if I said that right. And a couple of other things, a couple of bands disbanded. The Moody Blues, but reformed back in 1997. King Crimson, and then they reformed back together in 1981. So those are some things that I looked up. I don't know if they're all true, but that's what I found in doing research. I just thought I'd begin with some kind of a little intro. So here I am. I'm going to dig in and show my 10 from 1974. One of my favorites, well, all these are my favorites, but I begin with Queen 2, released in 1974. One of my favorite records. I used to think this was a concept album, and I still do, but I've read various things about it. Some say it isn't, some say it is, and then it breaks down into not being concept anymore. But I don't know. I've always and will be a fan of Queen 2. Next, as we just talked about Bob Dylan and the band, Planet Waves. And I'm not sure, but I think Mr. Dylan, this is his artwork on the cover. This is one of my favorites from 1974. Zappa, Mothers, Roxy, and Elsewhere, 74. One of my favorite live albums is Zappa 74. Some of my favorite tracks are Penguin in Bondage, Village of the Sun, and Cheapens and Son of Orange County. I really like that live performance. Another one, I remember being excited when I had my first job as a young teenager, and I do remember this, buying this album and quite a few Yes albums with my first paycheck. Here's one of them. Yes, Relayer, 74. And I'm sure Yes fans have this in their collection. It also was featured on keyboards Patrick Morantz, and if you ever get a chance to pick up some of his solo records, good stuff. Another one is Miles Davis, Get Up With It. One of my other jazz favorite albums of '74. It's on the Red Columbia label. Brian Eno. Taking Tiger Mountain Strategy, excuse me, I always end up saying that incorrectly. But I love this Eno album. This came out in '74. This one right here, '74. And I wanted to say a few things about it. It was a junior high school favorite of mine. I used to play this album quite a bit. And some Aerosmith fans out there might not like what I'm saying. Don't get me wrong. Dream On is a good song. But with me, this song on this album does not get enough airplay. And I think it's one of their best songs. It's dark. It's just a fabulous song, and it's from Get Your Wings, which released in '74. Space and Seasons of the Winter, and when it goes right into the Pandora's Box. Great song. I really enjoy a lot of the early Aerosmith albums. And the classic Epic. And when I first heard this album, it was on an FM radio station, and they would play they had a show, and they would play albums all the way through. And this is where I first heard the album, and they played it all four sides. One of my favorites, Genesis, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. And kind of a few things I read about it. I hear that Peter Gabriel during this time was having a lot of personal things go on in his life. I think, and I'm not sure, but some of the ideas for the song came from a book the band was reading, or one of the band members was reading. But it is a classic, iconic album, and it's one of my favorites. And another one released in '74, BJH, known as Barclay James Harvest, Everyone is Everybody Else. This is another personal favorite. This album, this one that I have right here, I helped a friend do a record show, and instead of, I didn't really want the cash, he gave me credit, and I used it, and I picked this up. Polydor. It's a good album. And my last one here, another iconic album, Double, '74, Bearsville Records, Todd Rundgren, Todd. Very good album. Well, there's my, I hope I did that right. Well, there's my 10 from 1974. And until the next, before I leave, there's a few things that I'd like to share that I'm currently spinning this week. One thing is, I don't know if you can hear it in the background, I'm playing John Coltrane's Giant Steps. Mono. Nice. A couple of CDs I've been listening to this week. Almondule, Wolf City, and one of my other favorites, REM, Accelerate, which I think is a very good album they did. And hopefully I'll get that on vinyl one day. Well, thanks again to those who watch this video of mine and other videos. Appreciate all the comments. Today is September the 1st, and there's my video response, my 10 for 1974. Cheers.